My personal definition for the word witch is a woman who's fully in her own power, mind, body, and soul. And I invite people now to just sit with the word witch and ask yourself, what does it bring up for you? When we listen to our witch wound and when we heal it, we attract our soul family.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. I am so excited for today's episode. We have back on the podcast angel intuitive Taylor Paige. Taylor Paige is talking to us all about our intuition, how to hear what it's saying, how to connect with it, allow space for it, how to trust it, and how to heal our inner witch wound. What that means and what it means to truly take our power back, step into our sovereignty, our power, our inner wisdom. Taylor is also offering a special code to any of our listeners for $33 off with the code TBM333 for her Witch Wound course. This episode is going to be such a powerful one, and she even adds a little authentic code ritual that we've added into the upcoming manifestation challenge. And if you haven't heard, we have our biggest sale of the year going on right now where you can lock in the absolute lowest rates for the entire year and join our membership just in time for our manifestation challenge, which is kicking off on November 6th. Our annual manifestation challenge is the biggest TBM event of the year. This is where our entire community goes step by step through our science-backed manifestation process. Last year, 98.3% of our members manifested within the first 6 months of completing the challenge. This year's challenge is even better because we've also added new deep imaginings around sleep, feeling your feelings, finding your blind spot, letting go, a new exercise for authentic code, new ways to work with expanders. I am beyond excited to dive in with you all. It is going to be a truly magical and magnetic season ahead. You can only access the challenge if you're a Pathway member. So if your membership is up for renewal, stay tuned for a renewal email where you can renew for some special rates. And if you are brand new, make sure to sign up with our sale.
And now a word from our partners.
Not all probiotics are created equal. There are a million different products on the market promising to fix, rebalance, restore, reset your gut microbiome and gut barrier. But how many of them actually do? So many are not grounded in science, and that is why we are such fans of Seeds Daily Symbiotic. They are a 2-in-1 pre and probiotic capsule that actually reaches the gut. They are the most science-backed probiotic on the market. They're a team of experts, some of which who even coined the original term probiotic, are rigorous about their research, testing, and the quality assurance of their product. Probiotics are fragile and sensitive to heat, oxygen, light, moisture, which makes it really hard for them to fully get to the part of the digestive tract that they support the most. That's why Seed created the VitaCap. It's their proprietary capsule and capsule delivery system, which helps get 100% of the probiotic strains to the part of the digestive system that impacts it the most, which is why Seed is such an effective probiotic. And that is why I make sure to take my Seed 2 capsules first thing in the morning with a cup of lemon water to start off my day. It has made such a difference in my digestive health, my gut barrier integrity, my gut immune function, and it's even had an incredible impact on my skin. So if you're looking for a probiotic that actually works, you can use the code TBM for 30% off your first month supply of Seeds Daily Symbiotic. Again, that is code TBM for 30% off your first month's supply. You can check out the link in the show notes or go to seed.com/TBM.
All right, on to the episode.
We have a return guest on today, Taylor Paige of Angels and Amethysts. Do you know that you are actually in our top 10 of all time streaming episodes?
Are you serious? I am so honored.
Yes. Just looking at the numbers, I was like, whoa, okay, there was a power behind this one.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to say, since that episode, I have read for so many members of the TBM community, and it is just the absolute best community. Everyone is so just self-aware and just committed to creating their highest self and their best life. And I just feel so grateful to, I don't know, I feel like a part of the community myself.
You are 1,000%. You really are. You know, we have a long history as friends, but I feel like there's been so much growth for your brand and then myself internally and then TBM, and all of these things are kind of like elevating simultaneously, which is really, really cool to see.
I agree. And it just feels like we're all helping each other rise collectively. And I feel like that is the most beautiful communal gift that we can have.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's start off with your recent trip to Europe. Talk about what you were doing there, what you were studying there, and what you've been up to a little bit since the last time we spoke.
Yes, definitely. So since I was last on the podcast, my mediumship abilities, which is a completely different skill set to being an angelic intuitive, an angelic intuitive kind of uses more of your upper chakras. You connect to higher dimensional beings. Mediumship is really in the heart and the solar plexus chakra and is connected to past loved ones or people on the other side. And so in my angel readings, I just had these past loved ones knocking on the door like pretty consistently and giving really specific information. And so I'm in this phase where my husband and I are thinking like, do we have kids or what do we want to do? Where I want to do everything I want to do before that time period. And one of my goals, because I take the ethics of mediumship so seriously, was to have some training because I had raw talent for it, but you never want to put words in the dead's mouth. It's just like the worst thing you can do. So I actually signed up for a school in Stansted, England called Arthur Findlay College. And this is the craziest thing because I don't know like what I was thinking, but I signed up for their advanced level course. And literally when I got there, it was like professional mediums for like 20 years that were like in this course.
Oh
and I was like, you know what? I signed up for this course for a reason. I have been a professional intuitive for 7 years and I'm just going to do my best. And so I actually had no formal training in mediumship. And on the very first day, I got called up to demonstrate in front of the school, which I didn't even know that that was something we were going to be doing. And my teacher was like, you know what? I feel your energy. Like, get up here. And I was like, okay, I've never done this before. She's like, don't worry. I'm right behind you. If you get stuck, I'll like push you. I'm like, okay. It was the craziest thing. I got her age, how she looked, what she did, her name, like all of this stuff started coming through. And it was almost like taking the leap. Like, you know, my definition for intuition is the sum of all the times we've trusted ourselves. And now I've added on to that for mediumship. It's your mediumship ability is the sum of all the times you've trusted spirit. And so I just stood in front of that audience and I was like, Spirit, I'm trust falling into you. Like, let's go. It honestly surprised me so much. And it was really just an amazing experience. And the school was almost like an X-Men school. Like everybody was just there. Like one of the exercises we had to do was sit in front of a partner that we didn't know and psychically and mediumistically draw their family tree. And so I sat with this girl from Australia. Her grandma came in right away. I was filling in her family tree from what her grandma was telling me. It was like probably 90% all right. That's just the kind of thing that blows your mind because you've never been in a situation to test that. So I highly recommend it for anybody.
Okay, so I know we have a lot of psychics and intuitives in our community, but I know there's probably also some intuitively curious people out there who are like, do I have this? Is this a gift that I'm able to tap into? Are people just born with it or they're not? How do you sort of see the psychic gifts for someone? And how can someone out there who's like, I've never really even attempted to do something like that or test if I have that, what would your advice for that person be?
I believe it's not only an ability we all have, but our birthright. And by not stepping into it, we are cutting off an essential part of our GPS system as a human on Earth. And if you have any type of curiosity or passion or interest in developing your intuition, that itself is an intuitive message from your guides. And you don't need permission from me or anyone else to tell you that you're intuitive. It's all about you just taking that for yourself. And so I see intuitive ability like any other skill. I think in this society, the unseen is not as valued as the tangible. And so intuitive abilities, psychic development, that can kind of get pushed down. I always say Shaq didn't shoot a basketball the first time and become Shaq. And it's the same with intuitive abilities. But for some reason, there's so much shrouded around them that's like, if you're not a third generation witch, then you can't do it or whatever. And that just could be farthest from the truth. And in fact, our loved ones on the other side, our angelic guides, our ancestors, our guides in general, they need us to tune in. That is how we will elevate the vibration of the planet. And so I think when it comes to people's intuitive abilities, they dip their toe in, or if they get something wrong, they immediately are like, no, I can't, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. But that goes back to my definition of intuition, which is the sum of the times we've trusted ourselves. And it's a practice, and you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that actually kind of ties into something I learned at Arthur Findlay College. I studied under this amazing medium, probably one of the top in the world. Her name is Eileen Davies. And she was teaching us that you need conducive conditions for connection. And conducive conditions do not include self-doubt, negative self-talk. So if you come into a reading or a connection, or even trying to get a sign from your angels and guides, if you're not in a professional space and you're like, I don't know if I'm right, or, oh, they're probably annoyed with me, which is projecting human qualities onto the divine, or I'm not good enough, or I don't know, you're already creating conditions that are not conducive to getting the message. So I always encourage to approach this work with joyful curiosity, because what's the worst that can happen? You get it wrong, then you learn from it, just like any other skill.
Have you ever had that self-doubt or that moment of like, oh gosh, am I good enough? And how did you transform that emotion? Because I could see so many people being like, it's almost like the spiritual bypass of it all. They're like, I feel fine, but like secretly deep down, all their insecurities, fears probably bubbling up. How do they basically like allow themselves to move through it so they can tap into that joy and curiosity?
Yeah, I've definitely had that. And I almost consider it a rite of passage in this intuitive reclamation. And for lack of a better word, exposure therapy is like the best thing you can do. Being terrified and doing it anyway, being terrified and doing it anyway. And that's not to say ignoring your warning signals or discounting what your own intuition is saying or doing things that make you uncomfortable. It's more about having your inner villain voice going off about all the ways you're not capable, qualified, or could be wrong, and doing it anyway. And I think one of the biggest shifts for me, because, I'm in my 7th or 8th year now, in my first, I would say 6 years, before every single reading, I was like, what if nothing comes through? What if I'm wrong? Blah, blah, blah. But the ultimate shift for me is not, am I right or wrong? It's how much can I be of service? And if you make that shift to a service mindset instead of an egoic mindset, that is when your entire practice will change.
One question our community we get a lot is around discerning. And I know we talked about this in the first episode with you, and definitely go check that out if you guys haven't listened already. But the discernment between their intuition or their human mind sort of projecting their fears out onto it. And I'm thinking specifically in this moment, and I'm going to trust my intuition with it, a friend who is really trying to discern if her marriage is something that she feels like she wants to continue on with, or if it's not everything. It's not the full potential of the relationship. And if maybe it's kind of had its run, and, we were kind of discerning back, and I was asking her some questions, and the advice I kind of gave her was like, I think if you're so worried that you have to make a decision right now, you're missing the growth that you could be having. And it almost doesn't matter what ends up happening down the line. Like, just check in day to day to day. And when you know it's time, you'll know. But for people out there, whether they're debating a relationship or a friendship or a job that they're on the fence with, how do you know when it's time to execute on what intuition might be whispering there? And how can they hear if it's intuition or fear?
Yeah, you've hit on so many interesting points there. And with your friend who's contemplating her marriage and kind of needing to know, I think that leads me right to one of the biggest blocks of getting our own intuitive messages, which is attachment to outcome. When we're attached to an outcome, we cannot get reliable intuitive messages for ourselves because we will only be looking for the validation of what we want to be true. And I think that is why our spiritual journey, our shadow work journey, our deep healing at a root level, it can't just be all love and light, or it will be superficial. You need the deeper healing, the rewiring of your nervous system, the healing of the witch wound, the release of ancestral patterns. You're at a place where you can sit in the unknown and the detached to actually get accurate messages. Because we're all guilty of this. Like, when you start dating someone and you pull a million tarot cards until you get the one you want about them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's the fear, that's the control. I think sometimes people see the intuitive work as almost this cheat code for control and to feel in control. But that's not aligned with the energy of love. Love and control are not parallel to each other, and our angels are connected to love. So it's already not an energetic match. So that's one really important part. And in terms of getting your own intuitive messages, I really recommend creating sacred intentional space for that, because a lot of us, when we are trying to get our messages from a fearful place, we are kind of like on the go, like talking to ourselves, like, okay, show me this if this is right, or do this if this is right. And I think creating more silence is so important, because we've never been more inundated with blue light and information and other people's thoughts. And the pioneers of this work were in a completely different world with just sitting in silence, being in nature, all of those things. And I think that creates a more empty space for your angel's voice to fill. And I think that's really important. And in terms of the core question of how do you know when to execute on your intuition, it's when it feels like an unignorable full body yes. Your body is your biggest divining tool. And that's why all of this work, it might feel overwhelming, but it's also such a beautiful journey through this dark hedge maze of our psyche. And there's always deeper levels to go. And when you have sat with the discomfort and you know you're not just rushing from a place of fear and control, but you genuinely feel the yes of it in your bones, and you know there's no other place to go but what this call is, that's when you know to act on it. And until then, your angels and guides will continue to give you evidence of support of the messages or not, but you will never miss a message that is meant for you.
Ooh, I love that so much, because I'm just thinking too, no matter where anyone's at, that chapter of letting go or evolving, or even letting a belief system go of something you believed about yourself, of how you had to show up, and maybe you're redefining yourself, becoming a different person, knowing that you can take that jump, you can jump off that cliff exactly when your body's like, okay, it's now. It's almost like when I think back to the times where I've had to do that, it's like a very gentle, like, ooh, okay, like it's a little nerve-wracking, but like I'm ready, like I'm sitting down on the roller coaster and we're about to go over the side and I'm good. And I've clocked moments where it's been like, I know what I'm ultimately going to do in this dynamic, but I'm not ready to do it yet.
Yeah, and that is so valid. sometimes we feel stuck and heavy and we don't know how to move forward. And in that instance, the stuck and heaviness is the message. Something has to go, something has to shed, something is draining your energy repeatedly. And so I think when we compare our spiritual or intuitive abilities with other people, we're like, well, this person on a podcast told me that spirit came to her and told her all this information. I'm not getting that, so I'm nothing spiritually. It's like, no. No, we all get our information in completely different ways. Never compare yourself to anyone because all of our abilities are like snowflakes, completely different. I'm not here to tell you what's spiritual and what's not. I'm just here to maybe inspire ideas that have been rattling around in your subconscious. When it comes to intuition and acting on the messages, people who hold on and don't listen to the message and stuff it down, in some ways it's a form of self-betrayal, and you will get heavier and heavier and heavier until you have no choice but to listen. And that's a message I get in readings a lot from people's angels. It's like, you know what I'm telling you already. You know this answer, but you've been quietly betraying yourself by pushing down your truth for so long until you hit a rock bottom moment where you have no choice but to wake up. And I think that acting on something, even if it's not 100% quote unquote right, gives your angels and guides momentum to work with. And that's more positive than having everything figured out and waiting and waiting and waiting. Just give them momentum to work with. They're continuously guiding you. And it's not like you have one big chance to get it right. It's a constant evolution and dance with spirit.
I think that will give people peace of mind too, just knowing that it's not this, okay, you have this one window, and if you don't jump in this window, then the window's closed and you're stuck. If you don't jump in this window, then the window will reappear in a week and another week and another week. You know, you'll still have the chances to do that. And you'll probably learn a lot of lessons along that journey anyways too.
Exactly. And I think right now we're living through very Plutonian times. As an astrologer as well, I can't help but notice what the planets are doing and feel the intuitive messages that I get from the sky. And Pluto has been really cracking us wide open. I mean, America is going through its Pluto return. 2020 really came about with the Pluto-Saturn squares. And right now we're living through a moment of Pluto squaring the nodes and dancing back and forth out of Capricorn into Aquarius until November of next year. And so we are in such a Plutonian time, and Pluto is the planet of death, transformation from the root level up, grief, intensity, triggers, and power. And everything that comes about in Plutonian times is almost like a more intense version of Saturn because it's more deep rooted. And Saturn is so much about, you know, getting us to a place where we are learning our lessons and being a powerful version of self. But Pluto is a deeper level, teaching us to let go of the reins or be dragged. Like I always say, that's the main lesson of Plutonian energy is let go or be dragged. And also, where are you giving your power away? And so right now we are collectively in such a deep moment of transformation. It has not been easy at all. Many people might not even recognize their life since 2020, myself included. And so right now is just such a powerful time of death and rebirth on planet Earth. And you might feel like you're going crazy and that everything is wild, but there's no accident that you're drawn to this work, to this podcast here and now, because it's a deeper call to awakening in yourself.
I so feel the Pluto energy and the shifts and the calls. What would be one piece of advice you would give people that are like, how do I navigate it? Or what do I think about? Kind of goes back to like that openness. Be willing to have a different story, detachment.
Yeah, it's interesting because intuitively, I feel like a lot of these Pluto moments and energy are really connected to rooting out what is our parents and grandparents and what is us. I think a deep transformation from the root level is really tied to Pluto. Pluto is so much about taking responsibility for every aspect of your life. When it comes to ancestral healing, that's what I mean by a deep, deep, deep root level. And so, yeah, I think navigating these times It's so important to look at what you're not happy about with your life and not just tell yourself the same story about it over and over, but look at how you're co-creating with it.
Speaking of manifestations, one major manifestation that has come through for me recently is Bon Charge's infrared PEMF mat. Their PEMF mat, which stands for Pulse Electromagnetic Field, is a magnetic energy mat that sends energy waves to work with your body's natural magnetic field and improve your overall well-being. Now, I originally heard of PEMF mats back in the day. I used the first one at Lacey's Forest Retreat House, and I kind of didn't really think it was going to do anything at first. And when I laid on this mat, I'm telling you, my whole body just relaxed. My nervous system relaxed, and I fully was able to calm down. Fast forward a few years later, one of our absolute favorite companies, Bon Charge, has launched their own PEMF mat, and it is fully loaded with all the best biohacking techniques you can imagine. So not only do they have multiple frequency settings, one for delta waves to improve deep sleep, one for grounding and earthing that is in the frequency of Schumann's resonance, which is the Earth's magnetic field frequency, one for alpha waves to increase calm creativity, one for beta waves for logical thinking, conscious thought, or meditation, and one that cycles through all four to really align all different parts of your body. But that's not all. They also have red, near infrared, and far infrared light wave frequencies. You've heard me talk about this before, but red light therapy can be so impactful for muscle soreness, tension, pain in the body, detoxification, and so many more things. It is also packed with tourmaline gemstones, germanium gemstones, and amethyst crystals, which all help to balance your mood, keep you calm, activate spiritual awareness, open intuition, and attract positive ions from your body to keep you in that balanced state. Like I said, this thing is fully loaded. So once we received it, we unloaded it into our living room, and it honestly hasn't left the floor because I find myself jumping on it multiple times a day. When I want to meditate before the start of my day, or when I'm needing to process and do a DI, it helps to take me deeper, calm my body, calm my nervous system. It is so good for meditation practices. It just helps you go a lot deeper. And when you are needing grounding breaks throughout the day, it is fantastic. So if you are interested in trying Bon Charge's new infrared PEMF mat, you can use the code MAGNETIC, that's all caps, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Again, that's magnetic, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Or you can go to boncharge.com/pages/magnetic and check out some of the other incredible biohacking low EMF products that Bon Charge has to offer. Okay, well, that brings us into the witch wound, which you're educating, you're launching a workshop around. What do you see as the witch wound for someone who's like, what's that? What does that mean? And what is the history around this? Give us a little insight there.
So the witch wound is a part of the female pain body. And I say female not to exclude anyone else, because men were certainly burned on the stake for witchcraft. You know, all sorts of people were. The reason I speak about it as a female wound, again, is not exclusionary, and anybody who feels connected to this can have it. But it's mostly because in the main witch hunting text, the Hammer of Witches, the Malleus Maleficarum, it specifically condemned women. It was like the most printed book of its day right after the Bible, and was number 2 seller for 300 years. And every single influential judge, doctor, person of power read it and internalized the information about women, witchcraft, how our minds were more prone to the devil, all of these crazy things. And so I speak about it because the witch is an archetype that can belong to everybody, and I firmly believe it. The witch wound has just been so focused towards women, but again, any single person who feels connected to magic, witchcraft, etc., and relates to it, has a place at this table. But the witch wound is so much more than just those who have been persecuted for witchcraft and then that wound being passed down through epigenetics and living in our DNA. It's so much more than that. It's basically how generations of people internalized that it's not safe to be powerful, that it's not safe to be seen, that it's not safe to speak your truth, that it's not safe to be other in any way. It's not safe to trust other women. I mean, women were being tortured for confessions and then reporting other women. And it was just this really dark time. And an estimated 50,000 to 100,000 people were burned for witchcraft in Europe through that time period. And so the witch wound is an internalized wound that we have in the collective conscious and the pain body of women that tells us I have to stay mediocre, I have to stay safe. And if I'm not likable and palatable to everyone, I'm in danger. And so it can express itself in so many different ways. But it's interesting because the witch as an archetype is like the one female archetype we have that isn't defined by who she is to anyone else. It's not a mother or a sister or a wife. It's not who she is sleeping with or not sleeping with. It's just her and her connection to power. And something that makes it so interesting too is that she has this kind of blurred line of good and evil, and it makes people really uncomfortable. And everyone feels like they have to specify like good witch or bad witch. And it just shows this greater metaphor for how uncomfortable it is for the patriarchy to have women in power. And basically, when the witch wound and the witch trials started, women were taking up positions that men wanted. You know, in medicine, they were always the wise women, the healers. Then medical school started. Women weren't allowed to participate. They got slowly pushed out and condemned. The witch trials were very calculated, which is probably no surprise to what we see today politically as well. We can imagine it. But they would basically accuse a woman who was either outspoken or taking up a job or land that someone else wanted, which is still happening in parts of the world today, accuse her for witchcraft, torture her until she confessed or named other people. And even if that wasn't us in a past life, our relatives witnessed that. And this isn't just in Europe. This is all over the world. Our relatives would have witnessed it and internalized it and been super scared. That has lived so deeply in my subconscious, some ways to tell sure signs that you might carry this witch wound within you, which is like most of us, is a visceral fear of being visible, being seen for your spiritual beliefs, feeling really tied to the archetype of the witch, even if it's confusing. And I invite people now to just sit with the word witch and ask yourself, what does it bring up for you? Do you feel the need to apologize it or dismiss it or downplay it or say, no, I'm a good witch? Does it feel safe to be in an archetype that's so centered on female desire? I mean, there's just so much to say about it, but I had my witch wound so turned up that at the very beginning of this path, it's like angelic intuitive on Instagram. Like, are you serious? And at the beginning of this path, I remember it's so full circle, but got invited to come onto a podcast like 7 or 8 years ago. And I was shaking in my car. I couldn't get out. I was so scared to speak my truth on a microphone. That's when I really realized like I'm carrying so much wound around this and it's actually blocking me from doing what I'm here to do. And you don't have to be exploring a spiritual path for this witch wound to be prevalent because like I said, it's all the ways that we got in the way and that we took up space that other people wanted to take from us. So it's definitely spiritually relevant, but it casts a bigger umbrella than that.
I'm even thinking like in the media, how witches are portrayed, you know, in the movies we see and in Halloween decor and all of those pieces of what is this imagery of a witch. And it's funny because ever since I was a kid, I was like, I just want magical power so I could be a witch. Like, I just want to be Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I just want to like wake up on my 16th birthday and my mom says, you're the lucky one. You have magical powers. You can do it. And I still feel like there's that part of me that is so intrigued and interested, but I'm like, well, I don't have those gifts, or I can't do that magical stuff, or who am I to say that I'm a witch? Like, I'm not practicing magic. Where's my spell books? Like there's all of these associations that I think we've taken over time that we're like, but I like science and logical thinking. Like, how did the two interplay, But then there's that, if I really tap into my soul, it's like, girl, of course you're a witch.
Yeah.
It's that interesting interplay as well.
I think you just brought up so many important points because one, I always speak about the work that I do as unproven science. I don't think there's a real disconnect from magic and science. I just think that it hasn't been completely studied or understood yet. But if it's a human function, it has to exist on some scientific level. And I know that they've already done studies on psychics' brains and mediums' brains. And when they go into a reading, they found that we go into a waking state of REM, which is like so interesting. But you touched going back to the witch wound on something that's been coming up for me over and over again, which is what is our inner child's connection to the witch? Because what was our instinct? Almost every person I know is dressed up as a witch for Halloween, including myself. Like every year I would be a witch. And it's almost like our inner child is naturally connected to that. It remembers it. It resonates with being powerful. But then how was that either shamed out of us, not celebrated in us? Where did we not feel safe to express it? And imagine if our first bleed or some sort of ritualistic initiation into womanhood, what if we had a party? What if we had a ritual? What if we were taught that it was the most sacred, beautiful thing? But instead, it's like every part of these beautiful, divine, feminine, ritualistic time periods in the map of our life has been so sanitized and demonized and told to be hidden and hushed. And so I think an interesting exercise is to compare what the word witch feels like in your body in modern day, and also just what it would feel like calling yourself a witch in front of someone out loud versus how your inner child feels about it. Because our inner child, what I'm told intuitively about our inner child is that it's our connective link back to humanity. When society tries to desensitize us and have us forget and have us inundated and keep us as consumers and breeders and laborers, our inner child is like, I'm throwing a fit because this is sad and I'm not okay. And I'm going to remind you to cry. And no matter how inconvenient it is, I'm going to be a connection thread back to your humanity. And so I think the inner child is an essential part for witch wound healing because they actually remember everything.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, so moved by that. I'm like, okay, yes, I feel it. I feel it. She's there. And I'm even thinking culturally, how many other cultures and indigenous cultures have had these really sacred, beautiful practices for so long. There's complete erasure of it and denial of it and destruction of their communities in practicing it. I mean, even the history and the brutality of the erasure of it is just so heavy and terrifying, I think. And that sits within everyone.
I completely agree. And I feel like we're seeing the consequences of that erasure right now. We're seeing how far the pendulum has swung to the masculine. And of course, I acknowledge that there's feminine and masculine in everyone. But I feel like under a patriarchal society, the masculine is like push, 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 like create, move forward, consume. And it's on the feminine side of the pendulum where we stop, feel, reflect. And people are like, how can all of these tragedies keep happening? We're just moving forward through all of them. And it's because we've been so pushed away from both men and women or anybody feeling safe to sit with the feelings, feel the feelings. And so I think healing the witch wound is actually an integral part of healing the world.
How do you see bringing that back into connection and how people can start to honor that or just excavate it or start to explore it in some way?
So this is a lifelong journey. This is not something that's healed overnight. And it's something that deeper layers are found in myself and anybody going down this path. And I think that there can be a subconscious resistance to starting this walk because on a subconscious level, we know everything is going to change when we embrace this path. Because when you embrace your power, the people, systems, jobs, relationships that benefited from you being small will not be happy with it. And when we listen to our witch wound, we attract our oppressor. And when we heal it, we attract our soul family. So when you're in the vibration of living from your witch wound, and by the way, the witch wound is one part, but of course there's like a lasagna of multiple levels of different things we're working through. So this is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's a very big and important piece that can be overlooked. And when you're listening to it, and if you're very deep in that place where your soul is calling to you for something different, you kind of know, okay, this is going to blow up everything. And that can be like the biggest scary thing. But listening to that call of your heart is so important. And so a lot of it is nervous system healing and feeling safe to be powerful. That mantra, I am safe being powerful, or it is safe to be powerful, is so important for everyone to hear, but especially women. And I think it really starts with radical honesty with yourself. Where are you giving your power away? And it's interesting because in my sessions, so often I see the sign of a witch hat around someone. And I've read for many in the TBM community. So perhaps those listening, I've said this to you. But when I see the sign of the witch hat, it's a sign of somebody who for many years has been magical, connected to the earth, connected to healing, connected to divination, that in some lifetime or course of lifetimes has had a wound where they have been persecuted for their beliefs. And now in this lifetime, it's one of their soul's purposes to unravel and detangle that wound. This is the call. This is the initiation. This is even just an interest in magic and herbalism and witchcraft and spirituality. That's your guides calling to you. It's no accident that you have this interest. And I always like to say anything you lose from speaking your truth was not meant to be yours. And I think the very first part of this journey is not pushing your power away, making everyone else's dreams come true, but getting really clear and feeling in your self-worth enough to ask yourself if you're really happy, what you really want, and how you can be responsible for reclaiming your power.
One thing that's popping into my mind too, and it's part of the radical honesty of understanding sometimes when people start to reclaim their voice, it's almost like they have so much messaging of what they should and could be that when they reclaim their voice, it's not even really their voice. It's what they think that their voice should be that would get them likes, attention, not to be rejected. And so they'll start to dip their toe outside and start to share, but it's not sharing from a true place of authentic integration. It's still a very subconscious calculation of how they need to show up in the world. How can someone take a radical look at themselves and be like, is this even my story? Is this even what I want to share about? Is this even, like how can they have that moment of reflection?
Yeah, I think this is so important in a day and age of social media where everything is just an echo chamber and you might be just sharing what you feel like you should share. And I think should is a very important word here because I heard somebody say, I can't remember who, that should is could with shame over it. So when we say like, I should do this, I should do that. So check that you're not doing things that you feel like you should be doing. I also think that 90% of the people I sit with are operating from a blocked crown chakra. It's like the most common block I see of overthinking, second guessing, planning, needing to be attached to outcomes, needing control. And that's like the inverse energy to sinking into your heart, sinking into your body, doing less. And so I think that comes back to that idea of creating sacred space because, again, we're projecting the same kind of capitalistic work style of our external world into our internal excavation when it's actually the inverse of that. It's not about achieving anything. It's not about being liked. As I say, one of the downfalls of human thought is if then thinking. If I do this, then this will happen. That's like the most controlling type of thought form ever. And it's also so out of alignment with how spirit works. And it's almost like just do it, then release the outcome. If you're somebody with a lot of mutable energy in your chart, or you're a reflector in human design, I think it's extra important for you to take space. As they say, like disconnect to reconnect. And it sounds so cliche, but like going into nature and just being there is so important. And as I just traveled all around the UK, it felt extra powerful to be in places of ancient power and remembered power and just put your feet in the grass there. And if you don't have access to that, I think it's just really important to set time aside to just be. It's interesting because so many of us are so results oriented. It's what I was saying earlier about not really valuing the unseen in this society. If that's coming up for you, that's amazing because it's already showing you a layer of detangling. So nobody is going to start this from an easy place. It's okay if you feel super blocked, or if you feel like you are just trying to show up in a way that other people will appreciate. That is just highlighting where you can start. But there's something I'm very moved by in Women Who Run with the Wolves. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, such a good, wow. It took me 10 years to read that book because I just sat with like every sentence and was like, wow. But she says that there's this tribe, and I'm like paraphrasing this. They let you tell your sad story, I think 3 times. And for 3 times, the whole tribe will listen to you. They'll cry with you. They'll wait on bated breath for the next word. But then after you've told it 3 times and everyone's cried with you, witnessed your story, felt the pain with you, you're not allowed to tell that story anymore, because that's where you're just getting stuck in old stories and replaying the past. And I always like to say each part of our psyche is perfectly designed, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, because it's just trying to either keep us from pain or keep us from reliving things. And that's where it's identifying the pieces of your psyche that are co-creating with this wound instead of letting you move forward. And that's where normally the block crown chakra comes in, is just the ways that we're trying to stay safe from past pain.
I love that because I think there's so much validation in the sharing of those pain points. And I even think, to the To Be Magnetic work and the reprogramming of moments, I feel like if I did 3 DIs on one specific memory or one blocked pain point from my life that keeps coming up again and again, and I really actually didn't judge myself, I didn't hold back, I felt safe enough to just go fully there and let whatever needed to take over, I don't think that would pop up the same way. And I think the trap is that people will dip their toe in. They'll like a little bit go there and scurry right out, or they won't fully feel that feeling, that emotion. They won't let that whole experience come up, wash over them, and then sail out of it. There's such a resistance to feeling our feelings. I think of constriction and constipation and, all of those like really tightening things. And it's like, we need to actually just carve out a moment of time, sit with this emotion fully. Okay, sit with it again, and then see how you feel. And I guarantee, we don't have statistics on this and everyone's different, and certain, people might need a little bit longer to sit with it. But 3 full immersion times, I feel like you've done a lot of deep work and you're in a good space.
Yeah. And it's not like you can't talk about what happened to you ever again. I wasn't meaning to tell that from a judgmental place, but it's more about keep evolving the story. Don't just stay in the same thing over and over and over. It's interesting because we don't really have the tools to feel our deep feelings. And for most of us, it's never been encouraged. When we were kids and we had tantrums or we had these big emotions, again, our inner child remembers everything. It encourages us to feel our big feelings. And we're like, no, it's not convenient. I have a meeting. Shut up. But, how many people when they were a kid were told to be good, smile, be quiet, stop crying. And so there's so much of a rewiring to do. And that's also part of swinging the pendulum back to healing the divine feminine, is coming back to a reclamation of our deepest anger, our deepest grief, because that's such a part of the witch wound too. And when I tap into the female rage, it is intense and it is vast. And there has been so many wrongs for so long, and it can be absolutely terrifying. The good news is when you first start down, as I called it, this like deep, dark hedge maze of the soul, you don't have to do that right away. You'll be led on your path in perfect timing, and your guides will not present you with a thing that you cannot handle.
There's so many people out there settling for unfulfilling relationships, or people who are stuck in toxic jobs, living in places and spaces that don't inspire them, and especially people who feel like they'll never be able to afford the things and the life that they truly desire. How do I know that? Because it was me before I discovered that manifestation is actually a totally viable, scientifically proven method of creating the life you want. I'm Lacey, I'm the founder of TBM-specific, and if you're not familiar with us, we at TBM offer workshops that teach you how to manifest literally everything, from love to money to career to beyond. Our courses are the most effective manifestation method on the market, and that's because of a secret that I discovered years ago about manifestation, which is you do not manifest from your thoughts. You manifest from your subconscious beliefs. So after decades of client research and input from leading doctors and therapists, we designed courses that help you rewire your subconscious mind to align with what you want to manifest. And the best part of all, for any skeptic out there, our work is completely scientifically proven to work. Just ask the tens of thousands of members inside our Pathway membership, which gives you unlimited access to all of our workshops, tools, and offerings that you'll use over the course of a year. This includes workshops on inner child, shadow, boundaries, love, money, the infamous ruts, and the horrible rock bottoms, and so much more.
And right now we have our big end of year sale going on where you can lock in the absolute lowest prices for the rest of this year. You can even get up to $96 off your membership. So check the link in the show notes and join us during our sale.
Okay, now back to the episode.
I love that you brought up the anger and the rage specifically too, especially for someone out there who they're just starting to get radically honest with themselves. They're starting to see like, oh my gosh, I've been keeping myself small. These are the people that have been benefiting off of me keeping myself small. It's really my choice. I chose to be there, stay in that relationship or that friendship or that job or whatever it is. And that's when that rage hits because it's the resentment. But part of relinquishing that or moving through that is feeling all of the rage. But then it's taking that accountability of you have a choice. You have a choice. How do you move through rage and see that too?
Oh, yeah. As a person with my sun, moon, Mercury, and Venus and Black Moon Lilith all in the 8th house, and I'm a Scorpio sun, I have a lot of rage, okay? So I think that this rage has many different levels to it. I was in an abusive relationship for 4.5 years. I hit a rock bottom where I was sick. I was in the wrong career path. I was just in this place where I had to betray myself over and over and over again to continue living in those circumstances until, just like I'm talking about, I've lived it, where I hit a rock bottom. It was an awful time in my life, and I was so angry at myself mostly for co-creating with it and letting it happen with the person I was with so many different things. I couldn't touch the anger at first because it was too intense. This is not an eloquent term, but I call it an it be like that day. And when I'm having an it be like that day and things are all too intense, I just like literally give myself whatever I need. I don't judge the process. I'm not like, no, I need to feel it. Like if I'm really just strung out and do not have the capacity, I love myself enough to have an it be like that day. And I highly recommend it. It's like noon and I'm just taking a bath. I'm like, it's an it be like that day. So that's one layer, is loving yourself enough to know when you have the capacity for deep somatic healing, because it's totally held in our body. And I think that also something that really helped me So basically, it was like 3 a.m. on Halloween. I had to escape my apartment. My abusive ex-boyfriend at the time was like belligerent. I had to have a security from the building like stand outside. I ran out just like in a shirt, no bra, like sweatpants, like a little bag. And I was looking at myself in the mirror that night. And I was just like so angry, so upset. That was like the breaking point of our relationship. And I made this promise to myself. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, never again. I will never let myself be treated like this again. And I created a sacred vow. In my definition of personal power, it's one, taking accountability for every area of your life, but two, the 3 tenets of it are self-respect, self-confidence, and follow through. And so in that moment, by making a sacred vow to myself that I would never let myself be treated less than I deserve and following through with that, that already healed some of what the rage was a message for, because every emotion is a messenger for something. And just making that vow and sticking to it made the rage feel heard in one way. That wasn't everything I had to do. But to me, that was like a life-changing moment. I saw myself in the mirror and I did not recognize myself. And I just said, never, ever again. And so that is such a powerful, your promise and word to yourself is one of the most powerful things in your spiritual toolbox, and upholding it and keeping it as much as you can will continue to change your relationship with yourself, your trust in yourself, because trusting your intuition is not possible if you don't trust yourself. So that's like one part of it. And then I started working with a therapist and it helped me so much. And especially after my mom died in 2021, there was so much anger there and so much rage. When we don't process one emotion fully, the next traumatic event that has a similar core emotion with it will unlock every single time you've ever felt that emotion if it hasn't been like fully processed. At least that's my experience of it. And I've been doing like somatic healing with her. I've been breathing into my different chakras. There was like one time with her where I was just ready to like let the world burn. I felt so much anger, but at the same time, it felt so good. And then after that, one of like the characteristics or things I've always come back to in my life is like really painful periods. And after that, my period was like 1 million times easier. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
The mind-body connection. That's insane.
I know.
Also, to anyone out there who feels like so stuck in whatever situation they're in, even just looking to Taylor as an expander, you can get out of the situation you feel stuck in. You can create a new journey. Your purpose and you are so needed in this world to help others. And had you not got yourself out of that situation, think of all the people you've impacted through your work and how much that has meant to the whole world. And like, just use that as motivation for anyone who's stuck. I don't know why I'm getting emotional about this. I'm just thinking of like, I don't know, maybe someone in the community needs to hear this. I'm letting it roll.
Yeah.
But like, you getting out of your situation is going to help so many people, not just yourself. So if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the bigger purpose that's calling to you, because it can be so beautiful on the other side.
I completely agree. And like, you healing yourself has a domino effect that you don't even realize, even if it's just somebody on the street that watched you stick up for yourself in a moment that you didn't think twice about, but it changed their whole perspective, or whatever it is, or your little sibling looking up to you, whatever it is. It's not common for people to really showcase that they're touched by something because, again, we're like not that comfortable with those emotions, but like they see it. I would love to offer a ritual for the community that actually came to me intuitively before I started recording.
I would love that.
Okay, so I got so excited because this download came to me before we started recording about a TBM-specific ritual, which is creating a sigil of power with your authentic code. And you can choose your authentic code, or if you want, you can just write an affirmation or a mantra that resonates with you. But I thought it would be so cool to create a sigil with your authentic code. And so basically what a sigil is basically when you take a phrase, a word, a name, and you take out all of the repeating letters. Some practitioners take out the vowels as well, but I actually like to leave the vowels in. So you take out any repeating letter, and then you see the letters that you're left with, and you draw a circle and you create some kind of combination of all of the lines and circles of all of those letters until it creates a symbol that represents and encapsulates the energy of what you wrote. And then I recommend charging your sigil by thinking about and feeling what it feels like to live in your authentic code. You can do one word of your authentic code. You can use all four. Just follow your own intuition. Or if there's, I'm getting right now that I love that it's 4 words, because you can do one for each season. And like witchcraft work is so connected to the season. So like on each season, you can create a new sigil, or you can create one for the year, whatever it is. But once you draw that and you feel connected to it, then you can supercharge it with your feelings, with your light, with your visions for yourself, with what you're manifesting or calling in. And then I recommend, whenever you need extra strength, to draw it on you somewhere, whether it's secretly on your ankle or your wrist or anything that gives you power. Draw it on pieces of paper and sleep with it under your pillow. Imbue that energy of that symbol as much as possible in your life. Find creative ways to co-create with that symbol. And it's just a reminder. And my personal simplified definition of spell work is a physicalization of intention. And of course, there is so much more that goes into spell work, but that's just the simple way that I can explain it. And so this sigil, just let it be a symbol to you that holds the sacred energy of your authentic self. And I think that that could be a really beautiful ritual.
I love that. That's so cool. That it's so funny you say that too, because we're going to be diving into the manifestation challenge for the end of the year. And one of the first weeks we're looking at our authentic code. And I was talking with our copywriter, Allie, this week when we were going through it. I'm like, does it feel magical enough? Like, are there rituals we can add in? Are there other elements so people can really just like solidify and make it such a special time instead of journaling in their notebook? And so this is such a beautiful like accoutrement to add in and to start honoring our witch wound and start honoring our inner witch.
I love that. My angels heard your angels and like gave me the message.
Yeah, pretty much.
I feel like it could be beautiful to like get a notebook and like draw that sigil on the first page and like big, and then just like journal or write experiences that you felt supported or you lived in alignment with your code or anything like that.
I love this so much. I'm so excited. Yeah. And also thinking about it as like a year-long dedication promise to yourself. And that's a way you can self-expand, because you can look back and see all the moments that you integrated it and were a part of it. One other thing I want to touch on before we jump here too is, what are all the ways, I want to give some like imagery of what it could look like to be reconnected to our inner witch. Because I think people hear witch and they're like, oh, I'm going to like light a bunch of candles and like cast a spell and blah, blah, blah. But it could be that if that's what calls to you, or it could be, like you said, herbalism or planting a garden, or, what are these ways that we can work with our inner witch that might not be what we think it is?
There's so many, but the most simple answer I could give is the unapologetic expression of our authentic self, our true authentic self. And so that's going to look different for every single person, and every single person's angels and guides are perfectly attuned to their higher self. And I truly believe our life purpose is to fully explore this slice of consciousness we've embodied. And without authenticity, we're not doing that. And so I think our inner witch is so connected to our shadow, to our unapologetic desires, to our magic, to our sexuality. And she's one of the most natural expressions of feminine energy. And by staying disconnected from her, we're keeping our hands spiritually tied behind our back, and we're keeping our third eye blindfolded, which is keeping us back in life and our true connection. The way you can connect with your witch is see all the ways that you're editing yourself for other people's pleasure, all of the ways that you feel like you're not expressing yourself authentically. And my personal definition for the word witch is a woman who's fully in her own power, mind, body, and soul. And so look at yourself, mind, body, soul, and how are you not taking responsibility for every aspect of your life or giving your power away to others? And that's the most simplified, because it's easy to say, do this ritual or chant under the full moon. But as I said in my love life workshop, I'm not getting to the magical ritual part of it until we do the deep healing inner work, because without that inner shift, the other stuff doesn't work because you don't fully believe it or vibe at that place. It starts from the root level up, circling back to these Plutonian times. That stuff is shallow without everything else underneath it powering it. And so I truly feel that those on the TBM path are already starting to heal their witch wound and are already in this place. That's why I just love this community so much, because it's such cool people and such aware people who do take responsibility for their healing in their own life. And yeah, so I think just continuing on and seeing ways that you are editing yourself. And just my last little thing I want to say is that I've been having a good time in a cryptic way thinking of the modern equivalents of ancient things, like the pyre, the inquisitor. Like, what's the modern equivalent? And to me, the inquisitor in modern day exists in our own head by imposter syndrome, self-doubt, trying to tell us that we're not enough, that we can't do it. And so I think one of the first ways that you can start healing your witch is tuning down your inner inquisitor as well.
I love that, because I think a lot of people, especially when it comes to purpose or creativity, right now we had a quiz on, are you in the rut, the rock bottom, the next level? And people that were in the rut were like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't even know what I like. And I think it's because that inquisitor archetype is so loud. I almost want to say to those people, like, you actually do know exactly what you like and you do know what you want to do. You're just not listening and you're not allowing the space for it to come through. So you don't need any outside thing to tell you what it is. You need to listen inside because it's already pinging at you. It's already speaking with you.
I had a reading with this girl and she was asking about like her career and how to move forward. And her angel showed me her going to people's houses and helping them find their fashion, edit their closet. Like, she just felt so lit up in the fashion space. And when I told her that, she was like, thank you for giving me permission to do that, because she was another person who was like, I have no idea. But when I said that, she knew exactly what I was talking about. And she said, well, I always thought fashion was shallow, or I couldn't make money doing it, or I just kind of wrote it off. And I think that's so common, exactly what you were saying. But spirit and our guides and angels, they work through us all, no matter what we're doing. And every single field in the world could use more consciousness and love. No one needs to give you permission. And it kind of goes back to our inner child that has all the answers. Like, what did you love to do when you were a kid?
Oh, so good. So good. Where can everyone connect with you? Check out the Witch Wound course. Talk a little bit about the course too. How long is it? What can people expect? All of that fun stuff.
Oh, I'm so excited about it. It has been percolating in the back of my mind for years. And so I'm so excited that it's coming now, and I feel like it's needed now. But basically, it's going to be a 3-part workshop series. I'm calling it Circle 1, Circle 2, and Circle 3. The first circle is on 1/1/1, November 1st, and the second circle is on November 2nd, and the third circle is on November 8th. It's all 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But the recording will be available if you can't make it live. 75-minute classes. If you can't make it live, each person can email me 1 question per subject matter per lesson, because there will be a Q&A at the end. And basically, week 1 is all about a deep dive on the witch wound, the history of the witch, and also reclaiming sacred feminine powerful ideas, objects, symbols that have been demonized and reclaiming them. Week 2 is all about identifying the witch wound in our own life, practices and ideas to help you heal the witch wound in your own life, as well as a guided channeled meditation with your angels to help release the witch wound and strengthen your inner witch and your inner magic. And then week 3 is all the fun stuff. Like I said, I always start with the deeper stuff so that the fun stuff has depth to it. And week 3 is all about sacred magical practices with your angelic guides. And I consider myself an angelic witch, not in the terms of good or bad, but that the power source that I'm working with is my angels. And every witch has a different practice. There's infinite ways of being a witch and all of them are right. But yeah, so the third one will just be embracing ritual, embracing your angels, finding your own spiritual gifts, and all of that fun stuff.
Oh, so excited and such perfect timing. Thank you so much, Taylor. This was very magical. I'm excited to listen back because I feel like I was like, taking it all in as we're going. There's so much wisdom in there. So thank you, and can't wait to connect further.
Thank you so much.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process, but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacey, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out The Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you could check out our free quiz to find out what manifestation phase you were in, the rut, the rock bottom, the next level, or the magic dark, and how you can navigate. Enjoy! We'll see you next week.